are things that the DA themselves can fix, but they can use the bully pulpit, right? They can start speaking publicly about how much we need change in these kinds of areas, in more funding for public defenders, in translation services, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
So what is diversion? A diversion is a program designed to enable people to avoid a criminal record upon successful completion of the program. Diversion opportunities are often facilitated by a police department, courts, a district attorney's office, or outside agency. So I think we can all probably say something about diversion. One positive part of diversion is if you've committed a crime and you are given this opportunity, then if you successfully complete this program, you are cleared of that crime. Oftentimes, people who haven't committed crimes, people who are not guilty, are pushed into diversion the same way they're pushed into plea bargaining. So then they go on camera and say that they've committed this crime, and then if for some reason, some small thing happens that is deemed a violation of this diversion program, now they're on record saying that they've committed this crime, and they have not successfully completed this program. So this crime is on their record, and that's, again, another way of pushing someone into the criminal justice system.
Yeah, so I mean, really a way to look at it too, diversion, but by the time the district attorney is making a decision on whether or not you're eligible for diversion, it's already gone too far. So you've already gone through the criminal, there's been a charge attached, or at least an arrest made, and possibly a detention in the Denver or any other detention center. And now we're going through the court proceedings. So ideally, it would be great to see diversion programs that could be geared to prevent people from even going through the booking process altogether. So say, for example, somebody who's suffering from addiction comes into a police department and is working with police prior to even being booked or fingerprinted on ways to successfully get clean or address their addiction issues. So diversion programs can be also led out of community service providers, people who are in the community, people who are who have the experience and are experienced in areas around that can deal with these types of people. So say somebody who suffered from addiction would know what it would take as a person to deal with addiction. They would be the most qualified. Somebody who's a former incarceree would be the most qualified to discuss what's most beneficial for other people coming out of prison. Somebody or people who have been directly impacted by law enforcement violence are the people who directly know what type of services would be most beneficial for people who have experienced the same things. So beginning to understand that service providers and diversion programs can be beneficial and implemented in a community space without even having to go to the district attorney's office in the first place. So those would be some things that you could ask the district attorney to press for.
Right, and this is, again, something that the district attorney could make happen. They have the ability to change the way that they do business to make it so that they say, don't talk to me unless these people have been offered a diversion program for these low-level offenses, kids with possession of marijuana, curfew violations, all these sorts of things, especially with young people, but even with adults that are petty crimes, can get into these programs that make sure that they learn their lesson, but don't get them hooked into the criminal justice system. That's something that the DA could make happen in our community, or they could not. And that's why, again, it's so important for us to pay attention to this district attorney race and make sure that we're putting someone in who's going to be accountable, and that we continue to hold them accountable after they're in. Sure.
Well, a lot of what we're talking about is fighting fire with fire until there's philosophy change among our justice system. And I didn't know if you guys know any communities that are successfully utilizing a community policing philosophy, because that's actually what changed it. And a lot of us are doing what communities did. We're not just from cat out of tree. So, when you've got a for-profit prison system, a justice system, everybody's a criminal. And we go like Portugal, but I know the world that's adopted, change in all of this. But do you guys know any communities in America that have adopted? It's a philosophy.
There are some parts of Chicago on the south side that say they use community policing, but it kind of depends on who you talk to what community policing means. and it's implemented in kind of different consistencies. So I can't really say much more
Is there
than
a
that.
DA's office in the United States that's bucking the system right now, or is it all going to be by private fire?
Well, I think it really comes down, we're in a pivotal moment for us as a community, because like we are going to have to develop, alternatives. We can't expect people who have been lodged in the system and conditioned to exercise the system in the way that it's been designed to exercise any different. Or especially if we're talking about making radical changes. That's going to require this type of a group. It's going to require thinking from people like us, but it's also going to require opportunity. So like we have acknowledged, we have never had such a public district attorney race in Denver. So now is the time to be developing these types of strategies and alternatives. So a good example, Jessica Hernandez is a great example, because this stemmed from youth who were sleeping in a car in an alleyway. So an alternative there would be to call, say, Rashawn and Alex, hey, there's a strange car in my alleyway, can you come check it out before I call the police? We get over there, and there's a handful of teens sleeping in a car, we just tell them to get out of here. Or consistently, like we have seen time and time again, people who are suffering from a mental illness, a family member or somebody contacts law enforcement arrives and they end up dead. And you have to remember that people have existed with the same mental condition in the same capacity with their loved ones, with their caretakers, for the duration of their life. Police get called one time and they get killed. So police have clearly demonstrated that they should not be first responders in cases where mental health is the issue. So removing bits and pieces at a time, I think, and then really coming in with new ideas and new language, because we cannot expect these people to do it for us, and they will never keep our best interests at heart as this changes.
So Denver Justice Project is mostly focused on Denver, so we can't say much more, but I personally know that I think we as a community should be looking at what Nicaragua is doing with their police force. They've had years and decades and a revolution that got them to the place where they are with their police, but they have the most sincere kind of community policing that I've ever heard of. So Google Nicaragua's police and learn more about them, because they're actually really, really interesting. So we need to keep moving because we're running crazy low on time. But just as I want to hear just one answer, because for the sake of time we would have had more. But someone tell me, starting today, from what you've heard, what are some ways the DA can help start to reduce mass incarceration in Denver? Yeah. They can use their prosecutorial discretion to change the way that things happen. Yeah. And there's one.
I was just going to say, I kind of want to hear from people that we haven't heard from as well.
Yeah. One more.
Hopefully.
Go ahead, Lee. Mandatory minimums. They can address their use and start to actually reduce them. Absolutely. Y'all are smart. You're on it. You want to take this one?
Yeah, so, again, starting today, what are some ways the DAs can reduce mass incarceration? Fund partnering, finding new diversion programs going forward. Like we had discussed, people who are going to be most experienced in dealing with a lot of the public health issues that we have discussed are people who have survived these types of issues.
That's like restorative justice?
I'm sorry?
Restorative justice programs?
I think, and I feel like there are different definitions of restorative justice, but in a sense, yes, that could be a method, that could be an alternative to specific avenues in the criminal justice system. Arrest, say an altercation happens at school between students. SROs should be using restorative justice tactics instead of issuing assault charges or tickets and things like that. So yes, you're absolutely right. Reduce overcharging in criminal cases, like we had talked about. This is what a huge contributing component to plea bargaining. Collaborate with more community organizations, direct service providers who are doing great work in the community and opening up financial avenues for them to stay afloat and prosper in the work that they're already doing. Allow people to participate in DA-sponsored programs as an alternative to going to jail. Collect detailed data on day-to-day activities in the district attorney office. We can track disparities. We can track who's been given diversion programs, who wasn't given diversion programs, disparities in sentencing, etc. So data coming out of the DA's office will be critical for accountability measures moving forward.
So this slide is we can have a whole presentation on just this slide. So the question is, what happens after an incident of law enforcement violence? So to give it to you in a nutshell, what happens is that the district attorney shows up either on the scene or very shortly after talks to the police officers or law enforcement who were involved in the act of violence and makes a decision based on what they hear from those people, whether or not to charge for a crime. And usually, in Mitch Morrissey's case, it's almost always been, no, we won't charge for a crime. And so then it's left up to the police's internal accountability mechanism, which is called the discipline matrix. So basically, if there's no law that's been broken, then we're not going to charge the police